I've always wanted to learn coding, but never made it. All until one day I found this old book, A Legend of a Wish-Granting Tree. Oh wise Strugless, please teach me programming.
Your wish shall be granted, this apple shall guide you. Sup.
And so I took the apple home and a story full of adventure, friendships and betrayals begun. So, where do I start?
Great question. Many people start learning programming by searching online for the most popular language and often end up with JavaScript or C#. While these are widely used today, jumping into them without understanding the basics can be confusing. And if someone forces their way into a language, if there is a demand to shift to another, they will likely struggle. So in my opinion, the safest bet is to start with the fundamentals. Coding is, bluntly put, writing instructions for machines. To do it well, you need to understand how machines will interpret those instructions. But delaying your writing of code until you have memorized books written decades ago isn't fun. So we'll take a middle way, a language closer to pseudocode where the fundamentals can be learned. Since the syntax of writing is close to everyday language and we can focus on the logic instead. Python.
Alright, let's install Python then. Yeah.
It's easy really, just go on the official site and run the auto installer. Make sure you have do the recommended options and turn on the path variable checkbox unless you know exactly what you are changing. And for ease of use, you're going to need an editor. I personally recommend Visual Studio Code. You might need to restart your device after installing these for the first time, but then you are set to start.
Finally, can't wait to actually write code, too much explanations.
That is a comment feeling. It would be useful to lecture you on data types and indentations, so many things now. But let's do something practical instead. A rock, paper, scissors game. Learn by doing as they say. So we create a new Python file, simple enough, and now let's print something. Let's play rock, paper, scissors, human. Save the file and run cmd in the Explorer at the same location. Then type Python followed by your file name. You will see this will output you back the message you wrote. This is what's called an output. In some languages print, in some cout, in others log, but as said we focus on the logic. This green text after the hashtag symbol is called a comment. It is not executed by the computer and is there just so programmers can remember what they were doing after a while or for sharing with other programmers. Where there is an output there must be an input. Inputs must be put somewhere in the data though, so we must name a variable where we will store them. In this case player_choice. Make sure you explain to the user what you want. What do you choose? Rock, paper, scissors? Then run the console command again. As you see, this space is weird. Make sure to always consider spaces when you write code that will be visible to users. Now let's combine input and output. How can we be sure the input was stored if not? Simply print the variable you stored it in. Oh, and you can print multiple things, even combining existing variables with strings you just now add, strings being text. But how do we get a response? We get an input for player, but we cannot ask the computer to input on its own. Python does not have a built-in randomization function, we instead import it from a library. Libraries are collections of reusable pre-written code. In this case, random library. You'll notice in most editors typing random will result in a different color. You can technically use it in this particular case as it comes from a library, but you should refrain from using the same names as functions. Using a short version like rand works better. One important fact is in programming counting starts at 0, so the second element is 1, the third 2, and so on. In this case we will generate a random integer, meaning whole number, from 0 to 2, meaning there will be 3 options just as in rock, paper, scissors. Now think of how would you describe the instructions to someone. If rand is 0, do 1 option, etc. Well, just write it like that. Just pay attention. Equal sign is assigning a value, like we saw above. To check if it's equal, use 2 equal signs. I added spaces before the options. This is called indentation. It ensures the computer correctly understands code blocks. If we had multiple actions happening when rand was 0, all those actions would be indented under it. If one wasn't, it would occur even if rand wasn't 0. Other languages use other methods as curly brackets to keep code blocks together. Also, you'll notice after the first if the subsequent conditionals are a leaf, short for else if, and else here. You use a leaf for any condition other than the first, while you can use else as a catch-all. For example, we could have had an a leaf for 2 instead, and left else to catch anything outside the expected range from 0 to 2 if an error were to happen in the randomization, and as such we would have printed that there was an error if else occurred. Now let's print the computer's response too. But wait, I sort of tricked you. See, this computer we've been developing is an AI. I know today people seem to think AIs are only the large language models like ChatGPT, but this is technically an AI too. As you can see, it gave a different response when asked the second time, which means this worked. We all hate homeworks, but to learn programming you need to figure out some things on your own. You have all the tools needed to solve the 2 problems I'm going to give you. First problem, using conditionals, compare player and computer choices and print out who won for each scenario. Hint, use an in the conditionals. For instance, if player underscore choice equals rock and computer underscore choice equals paper, do this, etc. Second problem, what happens if the user inputs something that isn't rock, paper, scissors or misspells it? Figure out a way to detect and print if the input was not valid.
Okay, I start getting it, but what are you going to do now, Apple?
I will simply go to sleep. Make sure you keep me safe if you want more knowledge.
Alright, I needed a break too anyways. So today I learned about inputs and outputs, the data that goes in and the data that goes out. Oh, and that inputs, or data in general, is usually stored in variables we can later use and make comparisons to.
I'm trying to sleep. Do you have to repeat things as if we were in an educational video?
Hey, it helps me memorize things. Aren't you supposed to be motivational? Where was I? Oh, I learned about conditionals, if-else statements, importing libraries, comments, that counting starts at 0, there was quite a lot.
I wish the wise strugglers could just magically give people knowledge instead of sending us to impart it.
I then fell asleep, unaware the following day something disastrous would struck my plans. Something not even the wise strugglers could predict.
Sweetie, I swear you never clean your room. What is an apple doing there?